Hey everyone, Marissa here. I did my missionary on Eric Liddell, and if his name does not immediately come to your mind, it might when I say that the movie Chariots of Fire was actually made in his honor. So I'll get a little bit more into that in a second, but Eric's life was more than just about sports and more about him being an Olympic athlete, but he actually goes down today as one of the heroes of the faith when it comes to sports. And a guy who had the opportunity to win a gold medal with it being able to hold a trophy over his head. He turned it down to glorify God on a Sunday, which is what he was taught his entire life growing up. So a little bit about his early life was Eric was born in China on January 16th, 1902. And a little fun fact about him was his parents actually were going to name him Henry Eric Liddell, but when his parents realized that his initials would spell out hell, like Hel, they made a game time decision and flipped his first and last name so that it is actually Eric Henry Liddell instead of Henry Eric Liddell. He grew up in a Christian home. Both of his parents were missionaries, and for the majority of his early childhood, he actually didn't spend it a ton with his parents. His family sent him to a boarding school called the London School for the Sons of Missionaries, and this was for his parents to be able to fulfill their calling and purpose and be missionaries in China. So Eric and his brother Robert spent a lot of their early life at this boarding school, which was extremely rigorous when it came to academics. It was very, very high emphasis on academics, but also very, very high emphasis on sports performance. The school saw that it imparted a couple things. It imparted life lessons, showed kids how to play fairly, but also how to be obedient to authority. And this is where his running kind of took off, and he started running and doing really, really well in small events. And then he was invited to the Olympics in 1924, the Paris Olympics. And it is here where he established a record for the fastest 400-meter run in all of history at this point, which he completed it in 47.6 seconds. And even though this was an Olympic gold medal, which he ran and set a record for, this was not his specialty run. His specialty run, the thing that he could crush, he could do really well, and the thing he practiced the most was the 100-meter race. And this was scheduled on a Sunday, which he was taught in school that was the Lord's Day. Therefore, he opted out and did not race. So Eric knew that he was gifted in running, but this was not his forever. His calling was to full-time missions, and that was ahead of him. So he actually went back to China to pursue this, and this is where he met his wife, and then they ended up having 2 children. During World War II, when the country was being invaded by the Japanese, Eric sent his wife and 2 children to go live with his family. That way it would be a way more safer environment. They would be protected. During this time, Eric's wife was pregnant, and he was hoping that he would see her soon again and be reunited as a family, but he ended up being captured, thrown into camp, and he never saw his wife and children again. And his 3rd daughter, he also never saw her again. Never saw her be born. So Eric sent his wife to live with his family, and shortly after he was captured by the Chinese, thrown into a camp with thousands of others. While he was in camp, he found a ton of opportunities to share the gospel. He was breaking up fights, settling disputes, but more than anything, he led everything he did with tons of compassion. A Russian prostitute who he was able to help while he was in camps, she said this quote, "He was the only man who has ever done anything for me." So I thought that was really cool. Eric spent a great amount of time in the camp, spending it with students and kids that were in the camp. He was actually fostered the name Uncle Eric, which I thought it was also very unique that he got that. But because if you think about his early life was spent at a boarding school, he didn't really have parents. And so he was able to give the blessing of what potentially he had an Uncle Eric when he was younger to then reproduce and give to the students that were in front of him and the kids. Eric's life ended on February 21st, 1945. He had a massive brain tumor that he was unaware that he had. But for all of us, his life demonstrates what it means to live out one's faith with conviction, but also great courage, and what our lives could look like if we have a calling and go after it to fulfill it. I want to end with this quote because I love it. But many of us are missing something in life because we are after the second best. And I put before you what I have found to be the best, one who is worthy of all of our devotion, Jesus Christ. And that is Eric Liddell.